Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It may interest you to know. I'm Toni and Marcolini, and I'm really excited to have back best-selling author Tess Gerritsen today. Welcome, Tess.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Now, you came the first time we talked about your initial book, right? And for this group, for this series that you started, you have an illustrious list of best-selling novels and series, not to mention the Rizzoli and Ives series, which they turned into a television show. I mean, I can go on and on. But you just started a new series last time you were here, and it's really about this like retired group of like spies really that wind up, they're older now, they're not in the game anymore, so they pick a really quiet town in Maine to go hang out. Right, and you think like that's going to be it, right? They're just going to shrivel up and play pinochle or something, and then and that's going to be it to them. But they keep finding their way into these great mysteries. Of course, the premise is just brilliant. And there's a cop, there's a female police officer there who gets who they are, and somewhat, I don't want to say relies on them because maybe that's too strong a word, but uh, lets them help in a way that's beneficial to her. Um, and so this is the sequel to that scenario.
Yes, it is, and it seems like I dreamed this up, but this is actually the reality that I live in. I live in a little town with lots of spies who've retired here, and I see them. They have gray hair. I see them in the grocery store, and they even run our library sometimes. But they don't talk about their past. But I do know that there are a lot of retired CIA personnel as well as State Department. It's an interesting little part in Maine. So I wanted to write about older people, and in particular, people who've had truly interesting or exciting jobs as young people. And now here they are. They have book clubs. They have cocktail parties, but they haven't gone over the hill yet. They're still ready to take on a challenge. And that was a fun part of the story was the challenges that they face.
Oh, you know what I that's one of the things I love about it, right? Because often we think, I mean, society at large thinks like when you age, somehow you're the lesser, right? Whereas typically when you age, you have such, a wealth of savvy, right, that comes with experience that cannot be, obtained really any other way. All the training in the world is not gonna change that.
Absolutely
So
true. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I loved that you did that with this book, right? With this series. Like you took these people who were still, I'd argue, at the top of their game,
Yeah.
right? I'd argue that they're still, I mean, yeah, they're not going to be able to run as fast or maybe, hang off a tree. But I mean, they're still intellectually, they're absolutely at the top of their game.
Yeah, they have to use their wits and their talent and their training. And I think society doesn't give enough credit to those with institutional knowledge. People who've known the past, they've known what works before and what hasn't worked before. So when these young whippersnappers come into any situation and think, oh, I can handle the technology of this, get away, old person, without understanding that that old person understands how we got to this point in time in history and knows what did not work in the past.
Yeah, right. So I loved that. I loved that this book focused on this group, and they're sort of like they're just quirky and eccentric and monstrously interesting, and they feed off each other, making each other more interesting. It's a great premise. So I start there by complimenting you. I love the premise. I'm curious, being you said there are actually spies that live in your town. Anybody ever meet you at the coffee shop or whatever and say, "Loved your book"?
Oh, I get I get a lot of winks, and I do hear from people whose parents were spies. I mean, sometimes the kids don't always know what their parents did, but then as
Mm.
time goes by, they realize, oh my God, my mom worked for the CIA. Um, and I it sometimes gets revealed in a roundabout way. For instance, my son hit one of his best friends. I tried to arrange a sleepover with the other boy's parents, and there was something the father said that made me laugh, and I thought, oh, you must be one of those retired spies. On the phone, there was a very long silence. And then he asked, who have you been talking to? So I found out that both the mother and the father had been retired from the CIA. And on the street where I used to live, we had a retired OSS officer on one side, that's a precursor. And then down a couple of doors away, I had somebody who was retired CIA. So you find out about them. I mean, we're all very aware that they live here. And it is actually really enriching to be in this community because they're aware of global affairs. They started, 47 years ago, they started the Camden Conference, which is an international global affairs conference that happens every winter here in this little town of 5,000 people, bringing in ambassadors and Nobel Prize winning writers to come and give speeches. So that is a true enrichment when you have such brain power living nearby.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the sequel, The Summer Guests. And I never give spoilers away, but I'll loosely say the plot of the book is that somebody there as a summer guest, their daughter winds up getting kidnapped, and I really like the neighbor, Maggie's neighbor, gets accused, and so that pulls the gang in to help find the girl, right? And to help
Yeah.
the neighbor. That's as
Becomes
bones as I can make it.
Well, like a large a number of communities in Maine, we have a population that every summer that booms because people come and they want to spend summer in Maine, and some of them have been coming here for generations. So it's a whole community of summer guests, and the story is about one of these families. The teenage daughter goes missing, and they don't know what happened to her. Nobody knows whether she ran away or got kidnapped. So they drag the pond to find out maybe she drowned, and instead they pull up a skeleton of a woman who's been dead for
Mm.
years. So how do these things connect? My group, the Martini Club, gets pulled into the investigation because Maggie's dear friend and neighbor, next door neighbor, has been accused of possibly being the criminal. And it also brings them in some history, some CIA history from, again, my local community. What was the CIA doing here in the 1970s? There's some real stuff in here that becomes relevant to the plot.
Sure. I mean, and then not unlike many of your novels, there are always I find two mysteries going on at the same time. That's not that uncommon for you. Right? Like to sort of have you have always your main plot, but it sort of weaves itself very nicely in with like a subplot that's going on that crashes, like to get
Yeah,
to the
and,
truth.
and then they become you realize that there is a connection by the end.
Right,
Yeah.
they become one ultimately. But I mean that you're very you're smart writer, right? Like that. I like that. I like witty writing, intelligent writing, and you do that. I mean, you give a lot of credit to your readers. You give sophisticated plots, well written, witty dialogue. So I always enjoy reading your stuff. And this wasn't a disappointment. I mean, this is although I thought it was a little more. Maybe violence, not the right word.
Well, that's funny because I'm trying to think, was there violence in this book? No, there really wasn't
Just like
much.
a more of a uh, sort of a. I'm trying to think of the right word. Not a graphicness, but um, I can't
There's
think of
an
the
autopsy.
right.
Well, actually, it's an autopsy of bones, and there is a prologue that starts off with an act of shocking violence, which seems incomprehensible and what is going on. But there are echoes of that in that initial incident later on in the story.
Yeah, well, you did start us up with that, right? You started us up with the guy in the cafe, and he's just, he sees these other two guys come in, and like he's not paying attention, and then suddenly, this big thing happens, um, and then he starts describing what happens, around. Yeah, and then when you get to chapter one, these people are gone, right? Like you're not talking about the prologue anymore, which I
Right.
always find interesting because that'll set in my mind like when will we get back to that, like to figure out what that was about. No, but like even with there's like an element of your let me say like your bad guys are never usually evil. Maybe that's the right word. Like you're
Yeah, I think that this is what we all struggle with when we write mystery novels is how do you explain somebody killing somebody else? It's incomprehensible to those of us who don't have violent personalities. So we
right.
have to explain it in a way that makes sense to us. That okay, that's logical. I can see why that person killed that person. If
And
you
that's
just
usual MO, right? Usually you write where like there's an explanation, even though, like you say, it's incomprehensible to the person who wouldn't kill somebody. But like usually you can connect the dots, like, okay, this person f felt desperate in some way, or this person,
right.
you see how that plot happened. But this I
Right.
felt was a little different with
Well, I think motiveless crimes are not very interesting. I mean, there has to be a reason why you would kill somebody, unless you're just a plain old serial killer, and then that's
right.
that's that's a different that's a different kind of book. So there is I think the violence that happens does happen in the past. A lot of it does happen in the past. Um, and it happens as a result of things that our intelligence agencies were doing at the time. I mean, let's
Yeah.
face it, that the intelligence world is full of violence. Maybe not committed by our side, but by others.
Yeah. Yeah, so I thought that was it was a little bit different, I felt like than usual. But I mean, overall, this is the kind of plot that will leave you on the edge of your seat from beginning to end. Because you definitely got me to a point where I thought I had so smart and had figured out what was happening, right? And I wasn't, right? Not nearly as smart as I thought I was, right? Because it's just you pivot,
Well, it's a little bit like I didn't know what the answer was either. And this is how I write. I write
really?
without an outline. I start off with the opening situation. I mean, I know what everybody and what all these characters think is happening. And as I'm writing, things develop. They change. Characters, they change on you. People say things that you weren't expecting. For instance, the teenage girl who goes missing, she comes with her very wealthy step family. And as the book goes on, I realize that these people have a lot of secrets they're not revealing, but these secrets come to the fore. Does it relate to the girl's disappearance? Well, I wasn't sure. But I found out by the end what all this was what was going on. And that's the fun part of writing. Well, it's also the hard part of writing my first drafts is it's really very much a way of discovering who these people are and what they did.
What I find very uncommon with writing, with books, is that oftentimes you kind of get the idea early on, or you can figure it out, right? I mean, at least I can. Like, I mean, I can't speak for other people's experiences, but a lot of times with these mysteries, you sort of figure out what's going on, unless of course they bring in somebody totally like not wasn't involved with, and I've seen that
Yeah.
happen, which is less satisfying when something unconnected happens out of the blue. But for the most part, you can figure out what's happening. And this is really just a testament to, like I said, intelligent writing because it's really hard to figure out what's going on, right? Even though you're trying to put the pieces together on the fly with you as you're going along, you pivot for sure. And just when you think you've got it, you don't. You
That's the way
don't.
I felt when I was writing it. But I think a large part of why many of us feel like we can point to the killer early on is that the writer is just trying to be fair with you. They want to give you the clues you need to solve the mystery on your own. And when they don't, then at the end you go, well, I didn't get that. That was unfair. So, we're always juggling how fair should we be and how much should we surprise you. But on the other hand, we don't want to reveal everything in the beginning. So it's a very delicate balance from the point of view of the mystery writer, is giving you enough, but not enough.
Yeah, I suppose that's true, right? There's absolutely a point where you want, as the reader, to be able to have half a chance to figure it out. But I liken it to like those old Agatha Christie books, right?
Hmm.
Like you can, I mean, if you're really paying attention, you can sort of figure it out, but it still keeps your interest till the end.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that that's sort of an art that's dying away. And with a lot of mysteries, it's either, super in your face, right, it's hard not to figure it out. Or there's something entirely different going on. But usually plots reveal themselves, I think, too soon, which
Mhm.
is why I appreciate like a true mystery, like a true, where I can't exactly figure it out, but after you tell me, I sort of look back and go, oh, you know what? There were pieces. There were pieces.
Yeah, well, the one way to get around the difficulties of writing a really good whodunit where people are going, "Oh, of course, I just didn't see it," is to make it a whodunit. So the reader knows right at the very beginning what happened. But the why done it is why did this person do this? And it becomes more of a character study. It becomes more of a look into their past as to what was it between the killer and the victim that made this horrible thing happen. So I do think that there are some very good why done it's. There are how done it's as well. I mean, how did he do it? We know he did it, but how did he do it? And though I think those are hard. Those tend to be more technical because then you're dealing with, the intricacies of murder. But
Like a
I
Columbo. Columbo's
Yeah, like
really
a
all about
Columbo,
the,
right?
yeah.
Right, because the viewer knows who did it. It's just that
Yeah.
Columbo has to catch up. So there's so many different ways to write about murder. The traditional is the whodunit, like Agatha Christie, but I think that modern writers are more going into the psychology and the why done it, which is just as interesting.
It done right, I agree.
Yeah,
Right. Because I mean, at the end of the day, too, like I think there's a lot of mystery to even nonfiction, right? To just living. You open the newspaper, you watch a Dateline, right? And you're
yeah,
gonna find out like that somebody killed their spouse, and it was and why, and they came up with an elaborate plan to outsmart the authorities. And the world is filled with that, right? I mean, most people think, oh, murder is so few and far between. Like the people don't give it its due, right? But there is a lot of that around us. People are getting killed. The news is filled with people who, especially, are being killed um, by people they know.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I think I mean, the very first mystery is what's the motive? Why did person A kill person B? But we have to go back to look at human behavior anyway. I mean, when you look at anthropological specimens, when you dig these bones up from thousands of years ago, and you can actually find um, physical traces of violence on them, you find out that probably 15% of human beings died through murder in the, very ancient days. 15%. So that was not
wow.
that unusual to kill each other. We're living in probably the safest time in all of human history. And
Well, that's
so
interesting. I
maybe
didn't ever
that's
even
why
thought
we
about that.
maybe that's why we read mysteries, is because we all inherently understand that humans are violent.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's more true than I've given it its due, right? Like I do. You can see Dateline or there's a couple of other shows like that, and they'll tell you, a story that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. It's sort of like you can't imagine this person did it. I pick up the news and I see, people in the neighborhood, and you'll hear like, oh, it turns out that they were slowly poisoning their spouse across. You're like, wow, really? Like that's like 2 blocks away. I mean. And there's something to that because we tend to think that people are what we are.
Right. I think that those of us who are peaceable, um, we can't imagine being that kind of person who would kill a member of your family. But I do think that there is a subsegment of humanity which is sociopathic, that they don't feel anything
Yeah.
when they commit violence. It's just part of who they are. And we live with them. So the real trick for us as human beings who try to be law abiding is to be careful. Watch out, be careful of who's around you. Always be alert and be aware of who you're falling in love with, because that's where you're going to see the most violence, right under the same roof.
Oh, 1000%. So now you're writing the book, and you're one of the authors who create on the fly,
Yes,
right? So you're behind the typewriter, and they're sort of roaming around in your brain, these people.
yes.
And sometimes they tell you, right, what's going to happen next.
They do.
Not everybody has that gift, right? There are a lot of
Well,
authors who say, if I don't plan it out, if I don't have every little thing out, you know what I'm saying, I can't do it.
well,
Um,
that's true, but I've never been one who to do a biographical sketch. And every time I've tried to write an outline, I've always ended up going off and doing something completely different. But I think the most important thing for me is let the characters grow themselves, let them develop themselves. And I like to say that when the Spy Coast was born, it was really because of a voice I heard. It's Maggie's voice. I didn't know her name was Maggie at the time, but I just heard her say, "I'm not the woman I used to be." And I remember getting up out of bed and writing that down on a notebook. I'm not the woman I used to be. What does that mean? Who are you? But if you are channeling a voice properly, you will hear a lot of things in that voice. I knew she was older. And you can tell it's a woman, and you can tell sometimes by the vocabulary they're speaking with, what their educational background is, what their regional, if they have an accent. That tells you so much just by listening to this imaginary voice. And then you let her tell her story. So my first question was, you're not the woman you used to be. Who were you? And that was what started the Spy Coast.
yeah. Well, Maggie's great. I mean, she's definitely, I mean, in terms of characters created, she's one of the greatest characters, literary characters I've seen in a really long time. I mean, I really dig Maggie. I think she's witty and, intelligent, and uh, she gets it, like, just enough. Like, she gets that she's also being dismissed in a lot of ways, right? I mean, I think she sort of gets that, like that dismissiveness that surrounds her, but that's her superpower, and in that
Yes.
regard, like she's able to use things to see things that you can't see, and to while you're not paying attention to her, she's able to just figure it out right under your nose.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing that if you have gray hair, nobody thinks that the wheels are still turning inside that head. So that's
Agreed.
Maggie's and her friends, these five people who are all good friends. And the other thing about this series that keeps me coming back to it, because I'm just finishing up the first draft of the third book,
Oh,
is that when I finish the book and I shut that book and I think, I miss you already, you people. I really want to know what you're up to next. I mean, they become your friends, and I want to be part of the Martini Club. I want to go to
so do
cocktail
I.
I want to go to cocktail parties where they're talking about the old days when they used to carry a gun. I want to hear what their memories are, and it's like, I miss you. Please tell me more.
And just when they're like hanging out and like they're talking about what they think might have happened, like they're kind of brainstorming together.
Yes.
Maybe that's the better word. Um, I want to be part of that. Like, right when they're
Yeah.
brainstorming, like I want to be hanging out with with them, and kicking in ideas and stuff. And I agree,
Right.
they're so like sarcastic, and um
They're cynical because they've seen the worst that the world has to offer. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
they're
but that's
very,
funny.
yeah. Yeah, I mean they're jaded. And what I love also is the contrast with Joe Thibodeau, who is the local cop. She's
Yeah.
younger. In a way, she's an innocent because she's a Maine girl. She's never really been out there and seen horrible violence because it's a small town. And then I see her little by little getting educated. They almost treat her as if, they're the kid sister. She's the kid sister, and we're going to bring her along. Um, so
And
to
she's reluctant in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, this is her. She's a police chief. It's like, who are you old people telling me what to do? So there is a little bit of, there's a turf battle going on, and she is very right to tell them to stay out of her business because this is her business as a cop. So watching that conflict as well has been fun, and watching Joe slowly begin to appreciate whiskey, which he never drank before. So it's she's becoming more, I think, more sophisticated, just as these older people are appreciative of the innocence of this town and how she represents it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love that it is Maine, right? Maine is also very peaceful, very pretty. And I thought I wondered often if that was a literary choice you made until you told me that you actually live in that town when there are spies. I was thinking maybe that was a literary choice to show the contrast to like a super, wild, exciting career traveling and craziness. And then the absolute mirror, opposite of that is this like small, pretty town. You spent your life seeing the ugly, and now you're retiring in the pretty. So
Yeah.
I thought that was like a literary choice.
Oh, it's an autobiographical choice.
But now I'm like, no, no, these guys are around.
These guys are right. And not only that, so I just mentioned that the Camden Conference, which is where we have our global conference every year. And I always try to attend it. And I am sitting there in that audience with like 500, 600 people. A lot of gray hair. I mean, the audience is primarily, and because this entire state is very old. A lot of gray hair. And then they ask for questions. And you see these people stand up and ask the most sophisticated, thoughtful questions. And you think, oh, State Department, well, retired CIA. That's why they're asking these questions. So it's a really peculiar little community here. I feel very privileged to be among these people. And yeah, I do get wink, wink, nod, nods, and little tidbits here. I remember one person came up to me and said, "Well, there's a guy in our yacht club, and we found out he was CIA because he got Alzheimer's and he won't stop talking about it." So it's just like these little tidbits that you feel like they have to go into the next book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think you just created, I want to say something too. This group is somewhat timeless, right? So we're talking about them a lot, like, oh, they're older, they're retired. This is not a book like that you'd say is just for an older generation, right? This is a book that a 15-year-old can read. Like these are just interesting, quirky people. The mystery is there, and there's nothing about it that feels old, right? Because it's a very witty, fast-paced book. I mean, you're sort of on the edge of your seat the whole time, right? I mean, for me, I was gobbling it up, going, I see where you're going, Tess. Like as I'm moving along, right? I see, I see. And then I was like, by the time I was at the end, I was like, I
I
didn't.
Yeah, I think of it as an intergenerational story because there's the old people, there's Joe who's in her 30s, and then there's the granddaughter of Maggie's neighbor who was 14, 15. So, it's multiple generations learning to connect, even though they have these these ideas of what that age group is like. They're going to find no, there's more to learn about old people and young people at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. Like I've said so many times, I'm a big literary fiction gal, right? So that, even though I love mysteries too, I can read. I told you last time, everything really but science fiction. I'm down with nonfiction, history, mysteries, you name it. But literary fiction's probably my absolute favorite. And then when you can take that and combine it with like a good mystery, I mean that's just the kind of trifecta for me in a book. And I find I like that you're able to do that because I like those multi-generational sort of where people are merging together of different backgrounds and different ages, and you've got like that personal interaction going on. We're moving the ball personally at the same time that we are peeling the mystery away. So I
Yeah,
really like that.
and
And
I
you
do
do
like
that. You do that. You bring that literary fiction to your mystery writing, which is, perfect in my mind.
I'm trying to, I guess the theme of this is community as well. It's this little town, this community that
Yeah.
bands together.
Mayberry.
Yeah, it's Mayberry with really smart people and really normal people. And there's one scene where when the whole community turns out to search for this girl,
Yeah.
um, and they're all marshaled together because of the town's Facebook page, and that's the way these little towns are here too. The police department will put something on their Facebook page, and everybody in town suddenly knows that there's a goat missing. Let's go find it. So
Yeah.
the innocence of communities as we like to think they are still are.
Yeah. And there are still communities just like that.
Yeah, there are. I
I
mean, they certainly
mean,
up here.
it's not like, I mean, things are a little bit different. Like if you're in New York City, that's, yeah, New Yorkers will turn out if you're, you
Hmm.
know, I like to say New Yorkers are the first ones who we get a bad rap. I come from New York initially, and I think New Yorkers turn out when they see something going on. They tend to roll up their sleeves and get involved and
Yeah.
try to help as best they can. But it's certainly not the same as when you go to a small town, like you say, you can put something in a Facebook and the whole community turns out. Like they just see things differently.
Well,
Um,
I think if you were to look at New York, you would say that each building is its own little town, and that
oh yeah, I like that.
I mean there is that parallel with buildings or with blocks or streets. Your neighborhood will come out, um, and we all want that. We all crave that. It's too bad that it feels like there's a lot more isolation these days.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I mean, I love the plot here. As soon as I found out the girl was missing, uh, I immediately said, okay, so like this is going to be the driving, and the girl next door, I can't think of her name.
Callie,
She's like a teenager.
yeah,
I can't.
Callie, her name is.
Callie. Okay, she's sort of like a surrogate daughter, really, for Maggie. I like to think. Right? Because Maggie doesn't have her own children, and I feel like she's somewhat in her mind adopted her.
Well,
Um,
yeah, Maggie has no, her philosophy is that the more people you love, the more weak your armor is. That it just
yeah,
makes you, it just makes you vulnerable. So she has avoided love, especially after the tragedy of her marriage.
yeah,
But you know what? This girl is clinging on to because the girl's motherless, and that relationship has developed again on its own, whether you wanted it to happen or not.
right. And so she does. I mean, you see embers of that in the first book. That how deeply. Oh, it's not obvious. I guess it's not spoken, which is something else I like. Um, Oftentimes writers tell you something. You're bigger on showing something, right? So while it's not spoken, Maggie is not running there going, "Oh, I love you, I love you, I love you." But you saw in the first novel, I mean, she clearly cares for this person because of the lengths she's willing to go. And so I like that. I like that, you see that in her, right? And you let me figure that out just by what I'm watching as opposed to listening to.
Well, it's funny what you see from Maggie is her trying to resist it. It's more like, okay, I can't love this girl. Just go away. Just leave me alone. But in the process of trying to resist this growing affection, bond of affection, it's happening, whether she wants
Oh
it or not.
yeah, yeah. She keeps getting herself into that, right? Um, And so on, and I liked that. I liked that. Like, as I said, you don't, the words, she doesn't say, "Oh, I love you," but you can see by her actions that she does care.
Yeah.
Uh, and I like that a lot. I like things like that, where you don't often have to put a lot of um, thought. You're just watching it and you're like, "Oh, this is clearly what's going on."
I,
And I like it better when I see it than when I hear it. Because anybody could say, "I love you," right?
Right.
But
I mean, well, that's the the basic principle of show don't tell. It's all about emotions. How do you convey that this person A loves person B? You can either tell your audience he loved her greatly, or you can just see that he brings her a cup of tea in the morning and he pats her head or does this or does that. That's the essence of showing.
exactly. And you do that really well. I'll put that out. So, you're writing the book. What was your favorite, without giving me a spoiler, but did you have a favorite part where you were like, I can't go to sleep?
Oh, gee, I'm thinking about that. Because every book has its like point where I just love this happening. Okay, probably the part that I enjoyed the most is the part that's probably most excruciating for the reader, which is when they first pull those bones out of the pond. And
Yeah,
the mom thinks, oh my God, they found my baby. They found my baby. And she
yeah,
goes tearing down, trying to intercept the boat with the searchers on it. And she zips open the body bag. Because that's like this emotional the lowest point in her life. She thinks her baby is drowned. And she
yeah,
opens the body bag and there's only bones in there. And it's like,
yeah,
it's not my baby. That
yeah,
that I think writing that particular scene was just it just happened. It just went really fast.
yeah. So that's the part where you're like, I can't leave these people.
Yeah. I need to give this poor mother some relief here. Yeah.
I imagine it's a lot like that, right? I mean, you're moving along writing and you're like there's a part where you want to eat or sleep or so I'm always curious about that. Like when you get to the point where you're like, no, I can't leave them. I mean, they're in crisis or
It's all about the emotions of your characters, yeah, and whether or not you want to give them some relief, poor people.
we now did you write a lot of notes along the way, like you at the grocery store thinking it out, or it was always
No,
before the computer?
it happens on the desk. And I don't use a computer for my first drafts. I use pen and paper. Uh,
No.
Yeah, I do. It's terrible, isn't it? I can type really fast. I can type 100 words a minute, but I can't really compose fiction on a keyboard because I then my editor's cap turns on and I want to perfect every sentence, which slows me down. So it's better for me to just write pen and paper. And I use online typing paper. And once I finish the first draft, I write the whole draft, and then I will put it into the computer.
I I'm speechless.
It's, you
You,
know what? It's that's how we learn to write as children with a little pencil in our hand. And I
yeah,
think
for sure.
it goes back to the very primitive storytelling impulse when we were children.
So you're not talking about just the intro, are you? You're talking
The
about the
whole
whole
thing.
book.
Yeah, I mean, I have a stack of handwritten pages like that, which is very dangerous because if my house burned down, I'll be gone. Until I get it into the computer, it's very vulnerable.
Be like a backup scan.
I know I should have backups, but I've done this for 32, 33 books. I don't know any other way to do it.
And you literally like write the whole thing out.
I do because
Do you
if it's
edit then when you type it in? Are you
yes,
editing
I
it?
do. When I'm typing it in, I'll start to do some editing. But once I've finished the whole first draft, handwritten on these little typing, online typing paper, I know what the story's about. And the other thing about it is that my handwriting is, because I was a doctor, my handwriting is really kind of bad. So I don't see the flaws on the page. I don't have this initial sense that I need to edit this chapter again and again and again. I have found that if you start doing that, you slow yourself down. You're really just trying to get that story down, and you don't want it perfect. You don't need it perfect. You just know that you will go back and fix it.
Your background in medicine, I assume, is why we always get an autopsy. All right.
Well, it's also that the audience demands it. But there's so much that is revealed in an autopsy, especially in the summer
Yeah.
guest. And it's really just bones they're looking at, but
Yeah.
they discover clues in those bones that she was murdered. Maybe how old was she, and especially the fillings in her teeth give you a very definite time frame of when she died.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much to be. I mean, even years ago, before we had the technology we have now, I think autopsies were the best clue most law enforcement had. Right? Because at a minimum, they could tell you if the person was struck from the right or the left, or from above or below, or which allows you to create a profile, right? Oh, the person had to have been taller, or shorter, or
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I get that, scientifically, even before modern technology being what it is today, it was the best clue giver you could have, I think, when doing autopsy. So I get
Oh,
that.
yeah, sometimes, and especially with Rizzoli and Isles. I mean, because Dr. Moore Isles was a medical examiner, her world is the autopsy room. So I had to have that in there too.
Yeah. Which is where all your medical background comes in.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful. It's certainly helpful to know how hospitals work and what an autopsy looks like. It very seldom is the center of the story, though. It's really, all about especially with the summer guests. It's about the family, um, from which this teenage girl kind of springs from, and what was going on under that roof that may be really relevant to the story. The other thing that's relevant, of course, is the topic of MK Ultra. We didn't talk about that. Um, the CIA operation that is mentioned in the story, and that really started this particular plot for me, because I had been talking to the adult child of a CIA retiree here, and she mentioned the whole family came to Maine because her father was working on the MK Ultra project in Maine. And I thought, okay, what's that? And then so
I'd never heard of it.
I began to do research into MK Ultra, and that's kind of like one of the three things that started the story.
Oh, isn't that interesting? As sometimes as adults, we think that we've heard of most everything, or we have at least something in the back of our head that is like, wait, I remember hearing something or reading an article about that. But it's always fascinating when somebody throws something your way and you're like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, and then the more you read about it, the more you think, why did I not know about this? But you'd have to have been aware of what was going on in congressional hearings in the 70s to know about
Yeah.
MK Ultra. Yeah, but nowadays, young people, you'd say that and they think, oh, is that a superhero? Because it
Yeah.
sounds like one of the Avengers or something.
Yeah, you know what? That's another thing I'm going to compliment you on. I always feel like I learned something.
Well,
Right? Because I think you pick some truths, right? Some historical truths, and weave them into all your books. And I like that.
well, I like learning too, so I think a large part of what I write about is, oh, let me find out more about that. Ooh, that needs to go in the book. Um, so yeah, right now I'm just reading and reading and reading about Russia and their long history of spying in the United States, and that becomes important for the next book.
Ah, see, that's my problem. As soon as I finish your book, I want to see the next edition. Right. I mean, I've read different series of yours, certainly. Was a fan before we met, but I'm really this particular series really speaks to me. Maybe because I'm old, I don't know. But I really find this club, this group of people are like friends, as you put it. It's like a group you're gonna want to hang out with.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to go back and hang out with them.
And you will. The next one is called The Shadow Friends. Um, and we would focus more on the character Ingrid Slocum and her husband, and what she did while she was an active spy and how it's come back into her life and maybe threatens her marriage.
Oh, cool. Well, on that note, I'm going to close.
Great.
We'll put a link up to the new one, certainly to Tess's webpage and to buying this book. Always a worthy read, a quality writer who produces high quality material. Please come back again for the third book. I really love this series. I hope you keep writing this series, and I can't wait.
Thank you very much.
When will the third one be out?
Oh, wait, I think it's scheduled not till next year, the fall.
Okay, I'll be after you. Thank you so much, Tess.
Thank you.
Bye.